And thank you all for giving us some time to talk to you about our experience regarding TMR feeding, which is our specialty, and some dry cows, which we also feel is very important to make the TMR feeding work for you guys. Okay, so my name is Lennart Karlsson. I am a nutritionist, been working for J-O Brinkin Sweden since 2010, 2011, around this time of the year actually. I'm also a farmer with cows in the central part of Sweden, and we've been working with the Kielinen system or Brink since 2008, and went from 60 cows to today we are milking 400 cows. So I'm gonna shortly introduce the company so everyone is on the same page where we are from. J-O Brinkin founded this company, and he is stationed in the southwest parts of Sweden and close to the city of Varberg. And he is actually also a farmer. We as a company are today mostly working with nutrition advising. So we are 8 colleagues working in the whole Sweden and parts of Finland and also parts of Norway. So we're covering quite a big area. And today, around 200 customers we're working daily with support. In Finland, I've been working since 2012, and I'm working in the mainland. And Erik has been, I don't know for how long, but he's been for quite some time on the Åland, as we call it. As a company, J-O Brinkin is mainly selling mixer wagons from Kielinen, Irish mixer wagons, and we also been selling bright span buildings now for a while, hoof trimming chutes, also fans and minerals. All these products we are selling, we believe are necessary and good to have for improving cow welfare and profit on farm. From last time, a couple of years ago, Jan-Ove was talking to a group of Finnish farms here for a webinar, and what we talked about then was high yielding goals, and I think the target was above 40 kilos in average. And you talked together with him and came up to some conclusion what can be limiting factors to achieving those numbers. I just wrote down some of them because we're gonna go deep into dry cow feeding as one of the important factors for succeeding in this. And I'm also gonna talk some about the important base in the feeding, why that we need to keep in mind and not forget. Jan-Ove went quite deep into it last time, but I just want to do a quick reminder so we don't forget why we do the things we do and how it impacts the cow. We're gonna tie. It was some questions if we could talk about the high cost situation that we have on farms today, and that's why I think dry cows can be very exciting topic actually, because it's if we're gonna try to reduce our costs, we need to produce more milk from the forage we're producing on farms, and by doing so, the dry cows will have to be a key to make that work. I will let Erik talk to you more about that. Okay, so we talk a lot about diets in balance, and what do we actually mean about that, and why it's important. So when we're aiming for these high volumes of milk, we are also telling our cows that we need to have really high intakes of energy, and those energy intakes will be a heavy load for the cow to manage, because it will produce a lot of acid, and this acid she only has 2 ways to manage. She can do like half of it she can take up as energy through the papillas, and the other half she basically only can buffer through swallowing lots of saliva. And the only way, we all know, the only way she can do that is by ruminating. So that's the key. That's the key. We cannot forget that, because if we miss that, we're gonna run into problems. So when we do all our formulas for milking diets and so on, we need to remember what we are feeding. So not focus too much on the milk yield. Just remember that we need a rumen here to work as efficiently as it possibly can. And what we see is when we come into these high yielding cows, if we miss this part about having a balance in physical parts, so the saliva production is as high as possible, we start seeing cows in problem here. And the difficult part, especially for you as farmer, and I know as for myself, it's hard to see it, because it doesn't come from one day to another. It kind of sneaks up on you. So you will start seeing cows that maybe you get some more mastitis, you get some more cell counts getting high or variates a lot. Manure is pending forward and backwards, and the system ain't quite steady. And when you walk home, it's very hard to see, especially in the beginning, because what we all aim for is lots of milk, and then when the milk comes, everything is good. And these problems can come running a bit later. And when you're there, you will start seeing, you will need to push more and more concentrates in just to maintain the milk, because the rumen isn't as efficient as it can be. So the cost of producing the same milk, if you're out of balance in the diet, will increase, not only in health, but also in input in terms of feed. So this is what we aim for. We aim for high yielding cows on a steady base. So we want to feed the cows a good diet, a diet that doesn't push her too hard, and she will ruminate and be reproductive. So we have cows coming into the system fresh and nice all the time. And this is very important. This is what basically drives the milk yield, actually, not the concentrate. Okay, this is running fast forward. So let's dig into the forage part. What you as farmers can do, what we see is, if we want to keep a nice and steady pH level for the cows, you have great chances of impacting this, because if we start off taking silage with too low dry matter or just too much acid in it, cows will struggle at once, even before you put in any concentrates. So if we just can aim for a nice silage with good dry matter and good silage and slush scores, cows will do quite well. Also, we see. Oh, and this I have to remind you now. We are TMR specialists, so for you guys who are not on TMR systems, just a reminder that take the silage that fits your system. So if you're feeding individual quite high volumes of concentrate, you will need a forage suited to that. So if we're talking on high quality silage, we mean it in a TMR point of view, so you can mix in something that works with that silage. So just remember, it's very important that you go for the silage that fits your feeding system. But if you are on TMR system, we have a good possibility here to increase the volumes of forage in the diet and mix it with other sources of energy silages. So instead of taking out the grains with a combiner, we can choose to take it as a forage. And let's say we can call it a whole crop from barley or wheat, or we can take maize silage in parts of the country at least. And cows do really well on these because these energy sources are a lot slower and nicer for the cows to take up as an energy source. And we see it especially on the robotic farms. I think cows are doing really well if we can take some of the barley as a whole crop instead, for example. Yeah, and so lots of possibilities. The challenge here, why we want to talk about the dry cows really, is that if we're gonna put in all this forage, it will take lots of volume for the cow. And it makes sense just if you think about it. If you put 10 kilos of concentrates in a bucket, it doesn't take too much space. If you put in 10 kilos of dry matter of silage in that bucket, you will need a big bucket. So that's why we're going to focus on, and we always focus much on the dry cow and how well she's doing, and to get the gut feel really good. And Erik will help you a lot digging into this later. So the challenge and why whole crop really can lift your silage to a new point is the fiber content, the NDF, so to say, will be a limiting factors for the cows, how much they can eat. We always hit the roof there quite soon. So different forage we need a balance in this NDF part. So we need some of the forage to be very highly digestibility to be high, and some a bit tougher for the cows. So if we take this grass silage really early, the whole crop will fit really well because it will be a slow fiber that balance the cows really well, but it will not be as slow if we compare to just putting in tons of straw or hay or so. It will just be too slow. So this really early cut silage, that's hard to feed by itself, but if we're using maize or whole crop alongside of it, it really lifts the silage so the cows can eat more of it and do really well by doing so. And Alvik Farm has been doing this for a couple of years now, and they're doing excellent results. It would be really nice if Jeremias or Zacharias had some time talking about that. Or we're also gonna take one farm from Sweden who has been doing really good results as well, organic farm. The plan was to do that in the end of the presentation.
So what do you mean about early cut silage? What do you think it should be, how it should be, and protein, energy, everything?
Yeah. Thank you. Good question. So early cut silage, I would say that above 11 megajoules at least, and protein level maybe 160, somewhere 160, 180 grams of protein. Not much higher than that, but somewhere around there, and the NDF value to be, let's say, below 500 at least, between 450 and 500. And I know you measure your silages in D values, so I would say not below 70, closer to 75, somewhere there. We're talking, yeah. And the dry matter should be, I think the cows are doing really well on silages, and the silos are looking good. If we can aim for around 30 to 35% dry matter, somewhere there. And I know it's not easy, but just to have a goal, okay, something to aim for.
Yeah, and what is the point? Why do you want to achieve that? Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. So it's when we do this, the cows are able to eat a lot of this, and if we balance this in the mixer, so we put in some fiber just to help the cow ruminate, basically, and balance the fiber quality with something a bit slower like whole crop or maize, we can save quite a lot concentrates when you start calculating on this on a 12-month basis. So just by increasing some 1 or 2 kilos of dry matter more home produced silage can do quite a lot of money on farm basis. Also, we see that it's very hard to put in some concentrates to help lift a poor silage. It's not the same, you know. And I think you all seen it. We need those grasses or silages to be really good and nice, because that will be it will set the rate for how good the production will run for the coming year.
Good. So thank you for having me for this webinar. We are always thrilled to talk to farmers about the things we do. So I am also a nutritionist. I work in Sweden, from the Lake Mälaren up to Sundsvall, so pretty much the middle parts of the country. I have never been to Finland, actually. Well, I have, but I have been on Åland, so it's not the mainland. So I've been working with customers on Åland since I started with J-O Brinkin in 2009. I also worked a bit in Norway. So both me and Lennart has actually seen quite a lot of cows and different system in Scandinavia. So it's a thrilling work. It's very nice. Farmers are always nice to work with. So this is exciting. I think that's enough talking about myself, and we try to get into what I'm going to talk about now, and that is the dry cows. So we have a kind of a unique system for dry cows. Unique, maybe it's not unique, but it's a system that we have developed since 2005 together with Keenan from the beginning. But I would say since 2015 or something, 2000 even a bit earlier. I think we kind of ended up in our own way of doing this a bit. So we'll talk about the dry cows, what we want to do with the cow, and what we want to do with the ration and the mix. And also in the end of the presentation, I'm gonna show you a little bit from one of our customers in Västerås. It's an organic farm, and the thought was actually for them to present their farm themselves, but they had to start letting the calves go from the farm at 8 weeks instead of 2 weeks. So they now are panicking with building a new calf shed, so they couldn't actually join the presentation today. So I tried to do my best and cover for them. So we go on in the presentation here. The J-O Brinkin dry cow strategy is we're trying to keep it simple. And one way of doing that is to do one mix for the dry cows. So we try to dry them off, put them on one dry cow diet, and stick with that all the way through until they calf. And that is a simplicity in that which I think attracts both us as nutritionists and also you as a farmer. Yeah, and we're going to talk about why we do one dry cow mix, and we're going to talk about also the nutrition balance and how the fresh cows, we want the fresh cows to perform. So one dry cow ration, as I said, it's simple for us to use. We only have to make, as a nutritionist, we only have to make one ration for all the dry cows. But that's, of course, that's not the purpose, but it's easier for us. And it's simple for you because you only have to mix one dry cow ration. But above all, it's the right thing for the cow. And why is that? A dry cow, she's quite set to pretty much eat all day. She want to eat all day long. Because in the winter time, in nature, the forage quality is really poor. It's mostly branches and leaves and stuff. So in order to keep her self in energy balance and the calf in energy balance, she needs to pretty much eat every waking minute. So that's also one thing that we try to fix for the cow, so she can have a ration that she can eat all day. But one problem is, if she eats all day, she cannot have a very strong energy concentrated diet, because then she will add body condition, and we all know what happens when a fat cow calf, that we end into problems. And why is this also good for the fresh cow? Because we need a volume, especially if we're going to do like Lennart spoke about earlier. If you want to have a big intake after calving of a high forage diet, where we have a lot of forage in the milker's ration, then we really need the volume. So we need to start preparing the cow when she dries off pretty much. We need to prepare her for a high intake after calving, and we need a volume to do that. So that kind of works really well with also diluting the diet from energy, so she can eat all day. We also need to dilute the cat ions, and the cat ions are potassium and sodium and also a bit of calcium. So we try to keep those ones low in the diet. Otherwise we run into that problem also. We talk a bit more about the minerals later. So how much do we have to dilute energy? We talk about the need of energy for dry cows at about 100 megajoules. So the cow needs about 80 and the calf needs around 20. It's a bit of a simple rule. It doesn't really probably hit the spot in the reality, but it's a kind of good rule to have. So if you think about it, if you would feed a silage, grass silage for the dry cows for 24 hours, and the silage has 10.5 megajoules per kilo dry matter, then the cow will have to eat to hit the 100 megajoules. She will have to eat only 9.5 kilos of dry matter. What would happen, you think, if a big Holstein cow would eat grass silage with 10.5 megajoules for a whole day? I would say she would quite easily eat 18 kilos of dry matter easily. So if you take 15 times 10.5, that's 160 megajoules per day. And that is too much. She would then she will add energy, add fat, put on body condition, and have problems with calving. Really big problems also. So that's why we need to dilute it, and we also need to hit kind of the right energy levels and fiber levels to do that. I think big Holstein cows today, high producing Holstein cows, you're probably looking at a bit more around 130 megajoules per day, I think. And those really high yielding cows can also need more than that. But it's more, we don't change so much the ration in that case, what we put in there, or the parameters. We just are a bit more cautious that with stocking rates and so on, so that we are quite certain that they can eat a bit more, and they will eat more of the same diet. We see that all the time. So we talked about volume, and just a little bit around volume. What I mean by that, it is not like if you walk along your feeding table and you look at the triangle on the left hand side of the cow, where you have this triangle that we can sometimes talk about, room and fill scale, 1 to 5 or something. I'm talking a bit more like the whole depth of the cow, the whole gut fill kind of thing. That is where the real volume is. And this takes, in my opinion, 8 weeks to develop. So that means that she really needs to go on a full diet, dry cow diet for the whole dry period to be able to really fill that volume up. You can't do that in 3 weeks, not enough at least. So we see that when we have cows on pasture in the summer, we try to stay at least 4 weeks. Then we handle the adaptation reasonably well, but we have problems with volumes when we only do it for 4 weeks. So definitely try to do it for 8 weeks if you can. One big thing also, except for volume and dilution of cations and energy, we need also the cows to adapt good. We need them to adapt to the milker's ration after calving. So a really big advantage for the dry cows is if we can base that ration on the milker's ration. So we take a big, the right amount of the dry of the milking cow mix, and we use that as a premix, and we dilute that with straw, and then we balance the protein, and we put also dry cow minerals in there. Then that is what we most that's what we like the most. But that is not practically done on farms everywhere. So sometimes we need to walk away from that because it just is too hard to do it practically. The mixer wagon might be too small or whatever. So then we do it from scratch, and then but try then to use the forage, the same forage as the milking cows are eating, and also the concentrate as well, and especially the grain. Because it takes about 3 weeks for the microbes to adapt to a new diet, which means during those 3 weeks it takes to adapt, you lose those 3 weeks for fully adaptation. So you actually need 3 weeks to fully adapt. So that is also, if you don't feed the dry cows any of the forages that the cows will eat when they start milking, then you have 6 weeks, and those 6 weeks just after calving is when they really need to perform on that diet. So it's very important, the adaptation. And also another important thing is that you actually try to feed the dry cow diet 1 to 3 days after calving, because then you will have a better start for the cow. After she dropped the calf, she needs to fill up with fiber again, and if you do that with a really like the milker's diet, which is so much higher in concentration of energy and protein, you will have so much blood sugar coming out in the bloodstream that could actually tell the cow to eat less a couple of days later, because she has so much energy in the blood and not so much milk. yet. So when the milk starts to go up really fast, then the cow will tell itself to go down because she is eating too much energy one day before. This is can be a bit tricky to understand, but it's actually very important. And it doesn't really have to be the dry cow mix that you feed the days after calving. It could be hay or something, just fiber that is tasty. Another thing that is really important after calving, if you feed a dry cow mix or if you feed hay or something, you could feed some cow mix and hay or whatever. But it's really important that you think about the balance of the calcium after calving, because then the calcium need is so much higher. So you can throw a handful of limestone per cow or something after calving. Or if you want to add boluses, I don't really care how you do it, but just make sure you thought about it.
I was going to ask that if you don't have those forage and all the stuffs from the milking cows TMR in the dry cows TMR, is it too short time if you give them a milking cows TMR, for example, 2 or 3 weeks before calving? Is it too short time if you don't have it the whole dry time? If they don't have that in,
if you don't have any of the forages in the dry cow ration that you will eat after calving, no, that's good.
How many weeks you have to give a little bit?
Yeah, you can actually do that. Feed the cow mix a couple of 2-3 weeks before calving, but you need to be sure how much you can feed from it. So you have to calculate for decad and so on. So for energy and decad in before you know, so that you know how much you can feed from the. But in an adaptation point of view, I think you're better off doing that or doing nothing. Absolutely.
Okay, because some of the farmers in Finland, they do that they have a different TMR for the dry cows, but then 2 or 3 weeks before calving they started, or a week before. But is it too short time to give them a little bit milking cows TMR 1 week before calving? Is it
1
too
week?
short?
Yeah, 1 week is too short.
Yeah.
You need to do it 3 weeks before.
Okay.
Also 2 weeks before, I think it's not enough time, because if you have an adaptation too close to calving, you can actually it's a bit of a risk that the cows actually will eat less because of the adaptation.
Okay.
Just be careful.
That was something new to me to hear that it's good to give this dry cow ration after calving, and just at the same day when cow is calving. How long time after calving you think it would be good to give this dry cow's ration?
Yeah, at least minimum 24 hours, but you can actually do it for a couple of days. Because the most important thing after when the calf has left the cow, she will be really, really empty in the stomach, because she hasn't eaten for quite a few days before calving either.
Yeah.
So this volume that we try to build up with the dry cow ration before calving, that volume we really need to restore that, because you have a big emptiness in the cow now. So if she doesn't eat a lot of fiber, you might go into a bigger risk of DAs and those issues also. And the most important thing is for the rumen to start working properly. Because if you fill the rumen with concentrate and too much strong silage or whatever after calving, you will just produce a lot of energy in the bloodstream, but you won't actually get the rumen going. So you need to get the rumen going before you can actually start the cow up in the right way. You understand? You don't
Yeah.
need to look for
Yeah.
milk production the first 10 days. It's not important. The most important thing
Yeah.
is the cows will ruminate and start eating and not eating of a how high concentrated diet the first couple of days, because then you will just push her in the wrong direction.
Yeah. There is sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
I believe you.
Oh, good. Good. Can we stop now?
Yes. Now I believe you, so we can stop. Yeah.
Okay,
You
good.
can continue.
Hey,
Oh,
one more question
yeah.
about this. That is it okay if you have milking cows TMR for the calved cow, but if there's hay or something,
Yeah,
because
perfect.
so they
Yeah.
can have hay available and they can choose. But
Yeah.
of course, then we don't know if they eat hay or the TMR or which one. But if you don't give them milkers TMR, maybe that's better than, I don't know.
Yeah, but
But-
you have to
but hay-
also yes, but you have to go a bit careful with the TMR
Yeah,
in that case. So if you only give them, like, I'm not talking dry matter now, I'm talking kilos. Like, say you give them 10 kilos, 6 kilos the first day, 10 kilos the next day, 15 kilos the third day, then they will eat a lot of hay, because that's only about
Yeah.
3-4 kilos of dry matter.
yeah, that's true.
Yeah. So just keep the cow mix low, just an adaptation and some tastiness, and then she will eat hay. And it's only for a couple of days, so you won't actually make crazy things with the rumen microbes either. So they will still be there when she will eat the cow mix full out. Okay, so this next slide here on the screen, it is from Jim Drackley's research. So I just wanted to it's the only diagram of research that you will see today, so look carefully. You can see the dry matter intake when it starts on the left hand side here. It's a bit curvy up and down, so it's just how the cows eat when they're drying off. It's a bit hasty. Then they're going on 13 kilos all the way up to where you see in the bottom line CU. So that's the close-up period. It's about 3 weeks before calving. And this is just to show what happens if you go too much with a cow mix or just a stronger diet. That's the red line. You will see quite intense increase of intake straight off, because that kind of diet is not so much volume, so they can right away eat 1 kilo more of dry matter because it's not so much volume, and they will get a lot more energy in them. So just a couple of days later, they will drop the intake because the energy level is higher than the demand for the cow, and then it goes down and down and down. So you see the green line. If you stay on the same diet, it will stay on the same level almost just a couple of days before calving. Then the intake will drop. That's the green line. So the red line drops actually faster and deeper, and that is why the green line, the intake after calving, when you're feeding one single dry cow diet, is the intake is then higher after calving. So that's just to show you what the difference could be. Was there
So
a question?
this is about the robot barns concentrate. How should it be lifted up after calving?
Oh yeah.
So yeah.
That depends on how much you will end up, kind of thing.
Yeah, but this is it okay if they move normally or go around the barn normally, and then they get the ration from the robot, and then they have for each if they are in a backside, mikä on takakierto, how do you say it? But if they can go to the robot right after calving, but they are still in their own pen, and they can eat dry cow TMR or hay, and then they can go to robot and get the concentrate from the robot. But they still have their own TMR, so they don't go to the milking cows.
Yeah. That's fine. Yeah.
And is it okay?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, no problem. Just don't feed them too much in the robot.
So how should you lift it up? What is the?
Yeah, normally, from my point of view, if we, like Lennart also was speaking about, we don't want to feed so much concentrate if we don't have to. So it also then depends on what's in the diet in the TMR, of course. But if we have enough in the TMR to fulfill our ambitions, then I think the only amount of concentrate you need in a robot is what the cows need to go there for. So how much do you have to pay the cow to get to the robot? That is our standpoint. So in my mind, that's about 1 kilo per visit.
Pointtihan on just se, että mahdollisimman vähän sieltä robotilta sekä alussa että lopussa, ja Alvikilla on ainakin toi käytössä just hyvin, eli kun se ape haetaan niin väkeväksi, niin silloin robotilta mahdollisimman vähän väkirehua sitten. Mutta tässä tapauksessahan sillä on toisenlainen ape, mutta siltikin, että se ei ole siellä heti korkea hetikään se väkirehu siellä robotilla. Eli just se pointti, että saa sen lehmän sinne menemään, mutta mahdollisimman pienellä panoksella.
So now we're going to talk about nutrition balance a little bit. And so this is how we try to formulate a dry cow diet in terms of energy, protein, and fiber, and so on. So I'm just going to go through the different parts here. It doesn't take too long. So the energy level we are trying to keep as low as possible, so we don't add body condition during the dry period. So it's pretty basic. If you go too high, the cows will put on weight, and if you go too low, you will see. I don't think you will see so much actually losing body condition or getting thin, because then that's really low and not really good. But what you will see is less colostrum levels and poor colostrum quality, and also some retained placentas, some increase in those areas. That's what you will see if you are too low. The protein side of the diet, we need some crude protein in there, some nitrogen in the rumen, because the microbes need that to be able to digest the fiber. But there's the amount of the protein that you add into the mix after you have diluted the mix, the milker's TMR with straw. That's what you have to do, but you have to dilute the ration with straw, and then the protein that is then add on top of it, that must be good quality. You cannot use like feed urea to balance the protein, because that is not the quality of the protein that they need. So you need to go with rapeseed or soya or something. The fiber part of the diet is pretty much just a result that you will get from hitting the other points right. If you hit the energy right and the protein right, then you will end up about 50% fiber. The starch, though, is important, because if you don't have enough carbohydrates in the rumen, the microbes will struggle to get energy. So carbohydrates are really important. If you get too low there, you will struggle, and then the energy, you might not see it on the energy level, but you see it on the starch level, hopefully, when you create the diet. Also think about if you have robots, which pretty much starts to become more common than conventional milking actually, is that you feed some concentrate in the robots. You need to really look in the dry cow diet, especially if you are diluting the milker's ration, that the starch level is there, because quite often we need to add starch, add grain into the diet. So you add also protein and grain if you have like a robot TMR to start with. So that's important to remember. What else is there? Yeah, you see there also on the what amounts we're talking about here. Milk is rationed about 5 kilos of dry matter, 5 kilos of straw, and that's normally 5 kilos, not 5 kilos of dry matter. Soya rape to 2 to 3 kilos, and minerals about 250 grams dry cow mineral. It's pretty simple, pretty straightforward, but it's really important that you don't go crazy off those limitations here.
Hey, there is one question in English in the
Good,
chat.
I love it. Yeah, please.
So maybe you can read. Does the energy content 9 to 10 megajoules include also energy from milker's ration, or is it only the dry cow's ration energy content? Is it the whole?
Yeah, this is the whole, if you look at only the dry cow ration in total.
That includes the milker's
Yeah,
ration, the amount of,
it includes everything that's in there.
Yeah.
So even if you don't use the milker's ration,
Then
you
it
should
needs
build
to
a
be.
diet to hit this target. So I think 9.5 megajoules is the most, would be the average, I think.
This is Tuija Huhtamäki from ProAgria.
Yes.
Is the energy content metabolizable energy
Yes.
or net energy?
Yes, it's metabolizable energy.
So very low. I only wondered how it can be so low if it also includes the milker's ration.
Yeah, it's because you have 5 kilos of straw in there.
Oh, yes, thank you.
Yeah. Management. How do we manage the cows and also the mix? The most important thing is that we don't put any extra pressure or stress into those cows. Because if we do that, we will also start asking for problems. So our aim will be the big low-ranked cows. So if you have a big Holstein cow, 900 kilos, maybe 1,000 kilos, some of them weigh nowadays. If you have a low-ranked cow that are as big as 1,000 kilos, you need to manage the whole system after those cows, because they are probably the ones that gonna pay you back later. So that means that you cannot overstock the dry cow pen, especially not the pen that's closest to calving. And if you have only one pen, you cannot overcrowd that at all. There's you need always to be food, because this is a low energy diet. So that means that if the cow cannot eat as much as she wants, she will quite soon drop her energy intake a bit too much. So it's really important that they can eat all they want. A minimum stress is, of course, few movements. You should not move cows within 3 weeks of calving, because they will drop their intake, and then you run into problems.
Hey, one question about this. this, how should you deliver the ration 2 times per day or once a day, or would it be, or how should you make it once per day, or how many times to make the ration and then deliver it to the feeding table?
Yeah, I would actually recommend that you you mix this ration at least once a day. It's quite common that you feed dry cows for 2 or 3 days in a row in the winter. So you do one mix for that can last 2 or 3 days. That is that's when you're gonna start looking for problems, because it needs to be palatable, this mix. So if it sits too long, it might start to smell a bit dodgy or something. And if it's cold in the winter, it will freeze dry. So when the cows will eat it, they will start sorting it because it's dry off in the cold. And also, if it's not freezing outside, it will start maybe not smell so good and so on. So try to mix it once a day. It doesn't matter if you feed it once a day or 10 times a day, but you need to feed as much at the same time, so you're 100% sure that it doesn't run out of feed between the feedings. So too many feedings, it's not good. So once or twice a day is, I think, the best. But then you need to also to be able to push the feed, of course, or if you have a trough, then it's no problem. But you need to make sure that the feed is in front of the cows and it's fresh and palatable. And about the mixing also, that's also a management question. We need to mix this ration. Of course, it needs to be homogeneous. The homogeneity is important, of course, so that all the forage is mixed well and the minerals are mixed well. And the chopping of the straw is important, because if you chop it too short, if you are really crazy about the cows not sorting, for example, you cut it too short and maybe add some water and stuff in there, then you will have easily those big cows, they can eat just too much feed, and then you miss your targets. So don't over mix it and don't under mix it, but try to hit where the straw is about maybe 8 centimeters, around there, between 6 and 10 centimeters long. So it's not so short, but it really affects how much they can eat from it.
What about the dry matter percent? How dry should it be?
It should be about between 45 and 50% dry matter. It really also depends on how much what's in there. Is it a dry silage? Is the mix that comes from the milking cows really dry or really wet? So if it's a wet mix, you don't have to add water in the dry cow mix. But if it's dry, if everything is dry, you might need to add some water, and maybe you need to keep it a bit on the lower side of the dry matter, maybe down to 45 or something. And remember, the dry cows, they love food. So try to keep them happy.
Yeah, it's Tauno Bakri from Ruokinta. What is your opinion about that? I saw a few weeks ago in Holland, and they make these bunkers of dry matter, these mixed feed for the dry cows. So what is your opinion about that? A few weeks ago, I was in Holland, and they make these dry mixed feed bunkers. So it's a premix for the dry cows.
Oh,
and
yeah.
Like you said, it really depends how wet this dry matter is. So, but that was really dry, and they make a 1 month bunker for its time. So I was really pleased about that. The quality was pretty good, I think.
So it was all dry feed.
Yep, everything, all dry feed based in corn silage.
Okay, so you add corn silage to that dry feed.
Yep.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that can probably work. Yeah.
So, but that depends. That dry matter bits have to be really high then.
Yeah, so it doesn't go bad or
Yeah.
takes heat. Yeah.
Yeah, and they covered it with plastic, and it takes about 1 month to feed that.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
That was really interesting.
Yeah.
Because the work hours were really low by that
Yeah.
kind of feeding.
Yeah, I would
thing.
imagine. Yeah. Yeah, it's probably a good idea.
Yeah, it takes about 3 to 4 hours to make a 1 month feed.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. But that was what was in the that kind of premix? Was it straw also or hay?
Yeah, also straw and corn silage and really high hay, high what is it? Dry hay.
Okay. Yeah.
I don't know all the mixtures what was in it.
Mm. Yeah, if the stuff is dry from the beginning, I don't see any problem with it. But if you do like we do or like most people do, like you mix silages and stuff, I think you need to. You're better off if the cows will eat it on one day, I think.
Yeah.
Depending on the weather.
I would just add in there, Erik, if you do a premix in that way, really dry, it might be an idea to keep the minerals out of it, just because it might separate in the pile, so to say. So just to make sure that the dry cows are getting the minerals they need every day.
Yeah, but they don't use mix feeder to feed that mix feed. So they just scrap it, and they don't separate the mixtures in it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they don't put any milkers ration into it. So it's only that very
Yeah,
poor.
it's only it's only based on one mix feed, and it's really dry mix feed.
Yeah. But if you would mix milkers ration and that premix ration for the dry cows, then it maybe would be a good idea to put the minerals in this way time when you mix those two
afterwards.
premixes. Yeah, afterwards. Yeah. Okay, but sounds good still. Yeah.
Anything you want to add there, Lennart, on the management part?
Just a reminder from before there to remember is a total daily intake of energy. That's why we dilute it down to such low, so to say, energy levels per kilo. It's the daily intake that is the tricky thing.
Yeah. Talk about minerals a bit, which is important because especially when we are using a silage, early cut silage, Lennart, we can quite often see quite high potassium levels because the potassium is really concentrated in those early cut grasses. So we need to be aware of about the potassium levels and also the sodium levels, so we don't bring in so much salt, for example, from the milker's ration, or even from the silage can be in some areas, especially if you're close to the coast. It can be a lot of sodium in the grass. This is also a key part in this dry cow strategy, that we dilute with straw, because it actually dilutes the potassium and it dilutes the sodium and it dilutes the calcium also. And it's a big advantage. So if you don't dilute the cat onions, you will end up in problems. Potassium, as you know, will create the milk fevers. Doesn't matter how much magnesium you put in there if it's too much potassium. So we kind of think it's better to take down the potassium than to to give heaps of magnesium. We actually want to give a lot of magnesium even so. But instead of using like anionic salts or something, we try to dilute the diet instead. So that's important, and the calcium level is important. If you feed too much calcium in the dry period, you will tell the cow that she doesn't have to start her calcium pump to get calcium from where it needs to come from. It needs to come from the bones, the calcium after calving. You cannot feed the cow calcium enough. It's not possible. It needs to come from the bones. So if you feed too much calcium before calving, you will tell the cow not to mobilize so much calcium from the bones, and then she will end up in milk fever and ketosis and all that stuff. So if we keep the calcium low instead, that will actually trigger the calcium pump to deliver calcium from the bones instead. Trace elements, there's really no point in feeding other trace elements than chelated trace elements. And the reason for that is that the uptake is actually so much higher from a chelated product than a normal unchelated product, like we used to feed. So, and the trace elements that are possible to chelate is copper, zinc, manganese it's not the right word. Manganese is the right word. Selenium and vitamin E is possible to get in organic shape. So that is good. So what happens is actually you want to have a strong bind to the trace elements so that they can get past the abomasum. Otherwise, the acid in the abomasum will destroy it, and that's why the uptake is so much better on the chelated products. So that's worthwhile the money, I think, to use that.
Erik, correct me if I'm wrong, but if we have silages with high potassium levels, for example, we don't have to use the same silage as they're gonna eat as a milking cow, or?
Oh, good. Yeah. No, it's better to if the potassium levels are just too high, you're better off not to think so. Then the adaptation is actually, it's better to choose the low potassium silages than to try to use the right kind of silage for the adaptation.
As long as it is grass, so to say.
Yeah. Yeah, good point.
Do you prefer to feed same amount of minerals to a high lactation Holstein herd as same as for example, a Ayrshire, smaller Ayrshire herd?
Yeah, good question. The short answer would be yes, because the small cows smaller breeds will eat less also from the so in percentage they will actually get less because they eat less from the mix. So the bigger cows will actually get more minerals because they eat more from the mix. But sometimes, yeah, we can sometimes actually add a bit more also to the bigger cows because they have slightly higher demands. That's my this is not science. This is just my or our kind of experience that the bigger cows actually need a bit more. They might need a bit more energy through the dry period, and they might need some more minerals also per kilo, so to speak.
Yeah. What do you see on intake on this herd, this Holstein herd in Sweden? What is the dry cow intake there? How high?
They can easily eat 16 kilos if you're a bit low on the straw and you're a bit chopping the mix a little bit too much. Sometimes we go also crazy about the sorting and we try to cut it down in pieces, small pieces, and then they eat 16 kilos instead and get a bit too much energy in the cows. Just a little bit about the fresh cows. So we talked about that before, that the fresh period it's really good if it can start with some continuously feeding the dry cow diet for a couple of days plus calcium, or if you do the TMR, milker's TMR plus hay or straw. It's also, or you split them, you feed a little bit of the milker's TMR and a little bit of the dry cow TMR. That's what is practically possible. And the fresh cow shouldn't lose more than 0.5 of body condition score. They can lose a little bit more, but try to aim for 0.5. They need to eat and metabolize, be able to get the energy out of the feed before they start milking. So, or before the really high milking yields come. And yeah, because otherwise you will have that blood sugar rush, and that will actually not, you will not come in the right balance until you get maybe 100 days in lactation if this goes a bit wrong. You can treat the cows with energy paste and all that stuff, but if you do that all the time, then you are never on the right side of things. You're just pushing the cow in front of you instead of showing her the way by going in front. No overcrowding in the fresh group either. Of course, if you have a new building, you are lucky if you have 1 feed space per cow and 1 bed per cow. And don't put the first calvers next to the old cows, because it's just they are so much bigger now, the old cows. So the first calvers they really are benefiting from a separated group, or they can maybe have some second calvers in there, but the all big cows, try to keep them away from the heifers. Yeah, milk yield, less is more. If you have less milk in the beginning, you will have more milk in the end of the lactation instead, and you have a smoother startup. So that's what this dry cow mix, or the hay stuff you feed a couple of days after calving, that is really holding them back a bit, so they can start filling the rumen up, start digesting fiber, so they can really get the energy out of the mix. It doesn't matter what we put into the cow if they can't metabolize on the if they can't digest it, then there's no point in feeding them. So a few goals to achieve with the dry cow mix. Assisted calvings should be under 10% milk fever, under 5% return placentas, and metritis also under 5%. That's pretty much what we are trying to achieve. And all of those numbers are actually quite easy to hit if you do things the right way. And even if you don't have so many cows, like you have 50, 60 cows, 1 robot or something, if you have 20% milk fevers or 15% retained placenta, you maybe don't feel that's a lot when you have a few cows, but there's if you look at the cost of it, it's actually costing you a lot of money.